Dynamite download.
Dynamite download, your home for all positive coverage on all elite wrestling.
You cut a promo like the DMD. They're a very
Symphony Boys.
the
symphony of five.
Download, you guys, positive energy. You have a great
January recruitment month for this.
Along, I come along in the.
Well, actually, I did see that, and I was thinking.
John Silver, welcome to the show, John. How you doing?
The cold spray. I'm tired of the cold spray.
I went to Bat to do an interview with those guys. You know why? Because they spread positivity about AEW.
Welcome to Dynamite Download.
I love that new intro, SPD. It's a good one.
Adding to it more and more every single, couple of weeks, as we're getting some nice footy, some new interviews. It is fun. It's like the highlight reel of Dynamite Download,
cool.
which is it's tough to trim it down in that short of a segment, but it definitely gets me pumped going. But man,
it is awesome, man. And like the thing that's great about it is you get to see more and more the roster and the people that we want to be able to talk to someday. It just continues to grow because, man, this show really, I felt like was a showcase of like start to finish. Felt very smooth, very quick. It didn't have there were no misses tonight. And
that's a good point.
That to me speaks louder than having like a one big banger match, right? Like, it is awesome when you have that one match that blows your mind or that it like really steals a show. But when you have a show like what we just witnessed, SPD, before the show even happened, we were like, man, look at this one. And you were like laughing because you knew I was so geeked for FTR versus Swerve in Our Glory. But even like the main event, right? I mean, you had Moxley versus Penta. And I know you're geeked to talk about the Jericho Appreciation Society match. You get to see Jericho and Daniel Garcia working together again. There was a lot of drama between those two guys. And there was at points when you felt like Daniel Garcia was going to really truly join the Blackpool Combat Club, but as Wheeler told us and told Danielson, Claudio and Yuta knew all along that Garcia was a guy who was cut from the cloth like Jericho, and you could tell when they worked together, man. Garcia this year has been, and I'll let you jump in, but we're gonna dive into that tag match. Let's talk about it.
Let's kick things off because
Garcia,
this is a great show, great match to open up the show.
Yeah, and that's what I want to hear your insight on it because obviously Jericho continues to be featured, and in this
he
role
makes it better every week because of that.
And in this role, is he? Do you think the Jericho Appreciation Society is shining? And this is where I mean Daniel Garcia, a total workhorse. A lot of people feel like he fits the Blackpool Combat Club, but when we talk about the big picture of the Jericho Appreciation Society, Team 2.0 is incredibly over with the fans. Garcia is getting spotlights being associated with Jericho, and this is a great matchup where you got to see why he is considered one of the more talented up-and-coming young wrestlers in the business. What do you think about this match? Because you have the drama between Jericho and Garcia on one side, and Claudio and Wheeler, just the very two quiet, absolute workhorses in the ring. An interesting way to start out Dynamite, right?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you start off with the Jericho Appreciation Society kicking off Dynamite, it's going to be a banger for sure. And excuse me for wearing my Blackpool Combat Club shirt, but
no need to apologize for that.
The Jericho fan, but
Love
I think this match at the end of it all, the showcase and the guy that stood out, how could you not? Claudio be talking about him, just the amazing showcase that he had to close out the match and throughout the match. And I think it was kind of needed,
Why do you say that?
He gets Jericho a clean pin. Well, he came in with a bang.
Yep.
The crowd was hot and still is hot for him. Quickly wins that singles title, the Ring of Honor, and not long after he loses it. And then after he lost it, it's kind of like where's he going at the moment?
You're
And
worried
so I
about
think now, especially what we saw in the match and after the match, backstage, which I kind of like that style that they're doing. That kind of you could tell it's a live promo. Obviously, we're right here in essentially gorilla position. We're interviewing, and they're coming fresh out of the back, fresh out of the curtain.
It brings
and then,
the energy.
Going. I think it was really well done and well transitioned overall segment. A interesting and new take for it all. But back to Jericho Appreciation Society.
Real quick, because I feel like AEW. I feel like let's breathe for I feel like AEW dabbled with some of these types of more diverse promo segments on this episode, like you just mentioned, kind of like that, like catching them off right off the after a match. The Darby segment that we got to watch tonight, more of a vignette, right? Like going back to that old school kind of like that taped promo. I like what AEW is doing as far as trying to diversify some of these backs, because obviously MJF is great at, you send the guy down to the ring and you can cut a promo, or in this case, talk to Renee backstage. But I liked what in the past AEW did. A lot of their promos were very diverse. And this was a good example. I like what you're talking about, especially with two intense competitors like Claudio and Yuta, right? These guys coming fresh off a huge, battle, right? It's believable that they're a little more fired up backstage when there is this tension that comes out of that segment. Sure. It makes sense. Two warriors coming out of battle. So I like what you said there. I really think that that's something that I hope that they integrate more in. And Blackpool Combat Club was a great use of that.
You're right. And to switch back to Jericho Appreciation Society, about the whole match, I mean, Jericho still is leaps and bounds. I mean, there's so much left in his tank, and it's so fun to watch, but I wanted to ask you this question. I'm enjoying the run, and enjoy the journey. Don't always enjoy the destination, or where do you see this going with these two teams? Like, is there an end game in the future? Because we're going to see Moxley versus Daddy Magic coming up on Rampage, a singles match. And this has been dragged out since,
You're right.
We saw them at Blood and Guts.
We did. I was going to say the same thing.
All these matches, which have been great, and some of the best feuds intertwined throughout television week in and week out. And so to me, it's not getting stale, but you're almost getting close to it running its course. Like, where do you go from here?
No, I think that's a valid point. I mean, again, we like to keep things on the positive side of things. So I'll say this, right? Like, I do think that Garcia leaving and then coming back, and that's why I brought it up earlier, was, I felt like that was an opportunity that they probably should have just moved Garcia forward. And even though I like the Jericho Appreciation Society, I think that Sammy could have easily stepped in and slid into that number 2 role, which, let's be honest, the Sex Gods, we all love those guys.
For sure.
I think Garcia could have moved to a more natural fit with the Blackpool Combat Club. And then maybe if you want to do the long-term story of Yuta and Claudio and them not trusting Garcia, that could lead to the Blackpool Combat Club having inner drama and inner turmoil, and eventually Garcia and Danielson versus Claudio and Yuta, or Moxley and Yuta, right? Like, those things could have happened. That said, I think that I am, as you kind of showed there, I'm more intrigued in what's going on within the Blackpool Combat Club than in Jericho Appreciation Society.
Me too.
Now.
There's a lot of stuff going on in there. And like I mentioned before, weeks ago, Danielson, when was the last time he's been in the ring or side by side of his group? He hasn't. They have not been one solid core group together. I can't remember the last time ever. You don't see Danielson coming down to say, to help with the numbers game. You don't see them all uniting. So this is definitely a group that has some holes in it, unlike the Jericho Appreciation Society, where they're a band of brothers. Even if they are getting their clocks cleaned by Claudio,
they're
around
united.
the ring.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely united around Jericho being the guy, right? And that works only for a short period of time, though. And eventually,
Right.
As you said, Team 2.0 wanted to get a taste of the tag titles. They mentioned they hinted at that before. Sammy, we got to see him in an absolute showcase with Danielson in this episode of Dynamite. And, again, that's a former TNT champion. I know it's a very unpopular thing to say, but that's a guy who deserves to be in a title picture. And so there's only so long that group will work with guys being in Jericho's shadow. Now, Jake Hager will be more than happy to hang on and hang around with Jericho as much as possible. But I think eventually that group is going to have to implode somehow. But it's wild to see that the group that looks like they're they're closer to imploding is the Blackpool Combat Club. I mean, you're right. Like it's crazy to think that, but it starts to make sense when you look at. I've always thought it was odd how that group was set up, where Mox is so clearly presented as the alpha of that group. When you have guys like Danielson, and to a lesser extent Claudio, who I think people believe Claudio is a legitimate, as you mentioned, title contender himself, right? So you have there's only so long where people can fall in line behind a guy who is the top, and maybe that's what's happening now, right? Danielson is. There's a lot of critics out there, I think, and Cornette is one of the guys who says it most vocally, and I'll give him his credit here. I do think that Danielson and you're a big Danielson fan. I think that Danielson doesn't feel as important as he did when he debuted. And
he doesn't, sadly.
That's a legitimate criticism of how he's been presented. And I think that the Blackpool Combat Club in some ways reinforces that, because Moxley is the guy. So it would be interesting if Danielson, this whole dynamic, with Yuta and Claudio fighting with Danielson leads to something bigger. Because who knows, if Moxley ends up losing that title, where does he go, right? And what happens to the Blackpool Combat Club? A lot of questions that will be answered, I think, after the pay-per-view,
which is quickly
right around the corner,
approaching.
Absolutely.
This is like we're going right into some of my favorites, into your favorites. I mean, this is one where we're going to need to buckle up, because you talked about it at the top of the show. This card, I think this was one of the best wrestled shows from top to bottom. You said it did, no misses. I think every one of these matches on the card and on Dynamite last night was very, very, had us interested in so many false finishes in every single match. And mind you were there. People were probably standing most of the time. And this was one of the best, if not one of the best.
There were
matches
so many times, and there were so many times in that match. Oh my God!
Yeah. Four of our favorites were featured. You have obviously these two teams in the ring. You have the Gun Club, or the Guns in the crowd, just trolling the FTR.
You're right.
And of course, you got the Claimed and Daddy Ass sitting on the stage. So it's like, if the only people that really are missing are Young Bucks and Lucha Bros, but the tag division is the resurgence of it right now is at it's getting at its peak right now, and it's a lot of fun. And Swerve, which we know how you feel, we super high on him. It was nice to see him kind of almost go full heel all the way now with that low blow on
Embrace it, bro. Embrace it. Oh, I love it.
And it was nice to see Keith Lee back in the ring and show his agility. I mean, his impressive strength and agility for a guy his size.
Special dude.
And just FTR just, trying to put him away, trying. There's so many times, man. I loved the storytelling of this match and the back and forth of this match. It was so fun to watch. And these guys have some chemistry. And I would love to see Dax and Swerve go head-to-head on a singles match once upon a time, too, because it would be pretty intense.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I walked away with, too, is I would love to see Swerve and Dax in a one-on-one environment. But I'm not going to even go down that path because to me, I'm so geeked about the state of the tag team division in AEW right now. SPD. I am so happy to see the talent again rising to the surface. And this is what's so nice about it. Listen to the teams that you rattled off. And you think about obviously FTR, the thing that we love about FTR is that those boys they're legit, bro. And they're the ones who kind of hold down the fort. But like Santana and Ortiz, the Young Bucks, Butcher and Blade, Lucha Brothers, all these teams have kind of all like they still exist in this company and in some way, shape, or form have made a huge impact. But now you see new teams rising to the surface, making a new impact on this division, making a name for themselves. The Guns, SPD, I'm so happy we had the chance to talk to Austin because I feel like right now the Guns are like they're right on the cusp of getting a legit run as potentially the ROH tag team champions. I think that they could
see them stealing a belt from FTR, and that would be pretty impressive and deserved too.
I think they could, and I think it would be great. These two guys are so good at what they do, man. And it's really exciting to see that just them leaning into their over-the-top personalities. That's the thing that we fell in love with them about. And that's what's fun about AEW, man, is when you get to see it's no different than any other sport, right? Like those of us who love football, right?
Right.
You watch college football and you see these guys develop and grow and then eventually get drafted to the NFL, and it's fun to see them grow and blossom. And that's what's happening. I think it happens a lot in AEW that doesn't go they don't get the praise that they should. A team like the Guns, the team like the Acclaimed, right? You're seeing teams that have legitimately been blossomed before our eyes and are turning into some of the more charismatic, fun acts on the roster. Can you imagine AEW without the Acclaimed right now? Right?
No.
That's a homegrown team. The Guns are a team like that, dude. This is a team in this division that can do it in the ring, but always keeps us entertained outside. That said, I'll be honest with you. This match, FTR versus Swerve in Our Glory, there were so many times when I was watching these two teams go back and forth where I was just like, two thoughts. Neither team deserves to lose. All right. These two teams are both incredible at what they do. And I wish that I could get a 2 out of 3 falls like type of scenario between these two teams, just because it was great to see them presented as equals.
Yeah.
And again, I know so many people are, especially if you're online on the IWC, right? Like so many people are itching to see Swerve and Keith Lee break up. And to me, like I love watching Swerve start to like be unapologetic about being a heel, like you talked about, and how Keith Lee is navigating that, right? This is a guy, Keith Lee, very intelligent dude, always kind of taking the high road in his career. Doesn't cause a lot of drama like online, is a very smart, like just kind of, you can tell, big man, but like he's slow to anger. And what I'm liking is seeing how Swerve is influencing him. And I know there are a lot of people who are interested in a Swerve versus Lee program down the road, but to me, as a guy who loves the heel, like loves and is losing a lot of great heels right now on AEW. I mean, you're stealing MJF of all people.
Oh
like
my
what the
gosh,
heck is going on?
Yeah.
I thought he was a shoe-in for life on Team Heel. But I digress. I love seeing Swerve slowly kind of getting Lee to lean into it. You saw Lee like, dude, this guy, if he can unleash the monster inside of him, there are a few guys in this business who could do what he can do. I mean, you said it. Like this match, there were multiple moments, and this is again, FTR is so good at setting up their opponents to look great, SPD. And this is one of the things is consistent with the guys that I love. I talk at length about the Bastard, and FTR if you've been following Dynamite Download from day one, you know that I've been beating the drum for FTR since the beginning. I love guys who know how to set their opponents up to look good. And FTR in this match, there were so many moments where I felt like Keith Lee in particular was set up to look like a stud. His athleticism, his power was on pure display. And again, the smarts of Swerve and Our Glory as a team were showcased, because I know like they kind of ran into the Acclaimed, the Buzz, which was a buzzsaw, and their popularity, AEW had to strike while the iron was hot. But Swerve and Our Glory, that tag team, their title reign, things were clicking with those two.
For sure.
And it makes me happy to see them officially earn that number one. I mean, no one can argue that the former champs, they deserve another shot at this point, man. I'm excited, bro. This tag division is on fire, and it's helped me when there's a lot of drama going on around AEW. It's helped me kind of settle in and be like, AEW is still the home for tag team wrestling.
You're right.
And no matter what, this product will continue to deliver stuff that I personally love to watch. And I know there are a lot of other fans out there who love the art of tag team wrestling. AEW is the home of that, period. No argument.
Hard to argue that tag roster.
Match like this?
In a match that's not in the main event. I mean, this could be a pay-per-view quality match.
I know.
Easily. And FTR, back in the ring, in pursuit of that fourth belt right now in one of a career years, if they've said, gets stopped short with Swerve and the Glory. But this is such a deep division, such a fun division. I mean, I can't wait to talk our Full Gear preview show or leading up to it, but this kind of is setting, I don't know, and you have almost two pay-per-views kind of back to back with the Ring of Honor pay-per-view and Full Gear. If you're talking keep your Ring of Honor champions, try to get as many buys as that Ring of Honor pay-per-view. You got obviously Jericho, you have Garcia, you have FTR.
Like I just said, FTR versus the Guns at the pay-per-view.
Ring of Honor. Then you have Jericho versus whoever, Garcia versus whoever, Samoa Joe versus whomever, just that alone would sell me.
You're right. Those names are big names, man. They are. There's no doubt about it.
Then you have Dalton Castle and the Boys versus maybe the Factory or something. That'd be pretty cool.
I know you're on board with Dalton Castle. He won you over. The power of the Peacock.
That's right.
And I think that
silly little goose.
You're gonna start to see. Here's the thing. ROH. I do agree with some of the critics in AEW that say that there are a lot of belts on AEW television right now. And the influx of ROH, it's been hard. The influx of ROH into the show, I get that. Be patient, because if Tony can put ROH on its own show, with the title holders that you just talked about, there's something there. And although I think that Matt Taven is going to end up getting squashed by my boy Wardlow, I do want to throw this out there, dude. Watch that match. I like Matt Taven, and he's part of the ROH goes back, right? You've seen clips of CM Punk being champion, there's been countless
Danielson in there.
Danielson and Samoa Joe. There's has a long history of great champions. But in its later years, it started to hit some, and obviously that's why the company was able to be purchased.
Sure.
Matt Taven was one of those guys who I felt like kind of was, even though people weren't talking about ROH, I liked Matt Taven and what he was doing with the Kingdom. And I think he's a smart wrestler. And again, we just got done talking about Swerve. I think you're going to see some parallels in Matt Taven's game when you watch him wrestle that you see that I like in Swerve. A guy who is just very smart, very, very cerebral, not afraid to take shortcuts, not going to apologize if the fans like him or don't like him. Just kind of like, just watch. And I know that more than likely Wardlow is going to end him in a Powerbomb Symphony, but just keep your eyes on Matt Taven, because that's another example that there's something to what Tony's trying to build with the ROH brand. And I know it's causing some, like, there's a lot going on AEW right now, dude, but he is trying to let things breathe. You can tell. And he's planting seeds for stuff that I think could bring eyes over to that brand.
Yeah.
And this is an example of that. The Guns and their interaction with FTR. FTR now losing that number one contender spot. Now, again, let's go back to the fact that, dude, like, FTR has been the number one contender for months and months and months, and they've made a stink about it, how they've been number one contenders and they never got a shot. They put that on the line and they lost, man. And as an FTR fan, like, I think that needs to be acknowledged, that this is a big win for Swerve and Our Glory. That's a big win. So you need FTR to be able to pivot into something else. And I think that FTR versus the Guns, I mean, think about it. Austin said that his dream feud would be with Grumpy Dax. So I like it, man. I think that there's something there. Going on from that, like, I mean, let's get into another. You just said a former ROH champion, Bryan Danielson, going against a guy, Sammy. What were your thoughts on Danielson versus Sammy? Because I've seen on social already that even the most vocal Sammy critics have had to begrudgingly join Dynamite Download. And, like, we've been through this whole thing. Like, I don't care about the drama and all that stuff. Right. Like, our opinion on this, and I know how you are. Like, we're not walking in their shoes. Right. Like, we don't know the true story. We don't know what's really happened. So it's not really our place to gossip about it that much. I mean, it's hard to get away from it. But more often than not, I feel like I'm trying to defend Sammy, because it's just like, we don't know. And people are casting a lot of stones at this kid. And all I see is an AEW original, and a kid who literally will lay his livelihood on the line forever. Like, he earns his paycheck, dude. This kid,
show stealer, easily.
This kid absolutely earns his paycheck week after week. This kid is willing to do anything. And he does it in a way that's different from Darby, right? You know, I love a Darby Allin who's like kind of reckless, and that you always laugh at the Darby is the crash test dummy. Sammy's no crash test dummy. This kid does some crazy stuff, but he is razor focused on wanting to win, and he has a fighter's spirit in him. And Danielson brought that out in a big way. I liked this match a lot. I knew going into AEW's Dynamite that FTR versus Swerve and Our Glory was going to be a crayfish special. But this match was, as far as in-ring work goes, tough to beat. I mean, tough to beat.
You're 100% about that. And you know, anytime Sammy's in a match, singles match, you know it's going to be a must-see match regardless of who it is, because the guy is always seeking to push himself to the next level, seeking for new innovations in the match. And we saw it. I mean, he gave everything he wanted, and gave everything that he had. And, you know, I'm a sucker for a good story, you know, being Team Babyface. And the cherry on top was that tweet I sent you earlier, how he posted about how he was.
I told my wife about that. Yeah,
in 2014, and he watched Danielson win the world title, and he said he's going to wrestle him someday. And he put it out in the universe, and it came true, you know, 8 years later. And that aside, I think Sammy,
he made his dream come true.
It's amazing. And you can tell he puts in the work, you know, this isn't someone, I know Jericho kind of handpicks Sammy, but Sammy is as cocky as he is. He's not given the silver spoon. You could tell he's puts in the time, he puts in the work. And I mean, just the flipping that he was doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, off the top ropes and the multiple backflips and everything.
He makes it look easy.
He does make it look so effortless and easy. And this was also a showcase of a match of a pure Danielson match that I love. You know, you have the power, the aggression, the physical chops and kicks. You have the strategic holds that literally make you want to cringe because he's like holding you, all these submissions and holds. And then you have the, the fast running knees and the fast tope suicidas and all this stuff. And going to the top. So both guys, I think, really showcase a catalog of their work and their chemistry and their first match ever together. Man, it was a home run, and I can't say enough good things about both sides. And I think the end result is good. Obviously, you need to see Danielson start to pick up more and more wins, and this is one of those. No matches, and none of Danielson's matches have been per se easy.
No.
I think he's not one of those that is going through the jobber squash matches. I mean, every one of his matches is like he's either bleeding in the chest or he's going in, putting in 10, 15 minutes every single time of hard work. And so it's interesting to me that Danielson still comes out of the heel tunnel. Did you notice that? He has been week in and week out. If you watch, he'll still come out of the heel tunnel.
I didn't notice that.
He hasn't. I don't think he's.
You were
ever
good at catching that stuff.
Yeah.
I did not notice
so
that.
He's
That's
been coming out of it for a while. But anyways, I mean, this one.
Now you got my brain going, dude. That's pretty interesting. If
you go back and watch, the past few months of him, even as I would say he's billed as a babyface.
He hasn't. I mean, and sometimes it's because he's associated with Blackpool Combat Club, but he is a nasty son of a bitch in the ring, isn't he? I mean, that dude just he is so much. He's vicious. Like he likes it. Like
that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, from someone
sick.
who's like all these injuries that he's had, it's really awesome to see him just want to beat the crap out of someone and take a beating too.
He's not afraid. It's great.
Getting mic time and blood for blood with Moxley, like that feud and that side of Danielson. Like I do love the Blackpool Combat Club, hence the shirt, but I think I want to see more as we're starting to get little tastes. Maybe that pushback against Danielson or Danielson pushback. I think he needs more of a spotlight. Maybe we do see Moxley take that vacation finally, even though he's been the MVP and his wife just showed up in AEW after maybe Full Gear. And then we see kind of a star or another person kind of step into that void, such as Danielson, of someone needing to be a top guy, whether it be heel or babyface, for a little while and give Danielson that spotlight. We'll see. I think that is deserved and would be a good position for him.
Yeah, I think, I hate to say it because I love when people get an opportunity to fulfill their dream and to do great things on TV. But I think in some ways, like AEW is overthinking it in some examples. And it's like Danielson is an example of that. It's like AEW should just have this guy at the top of the card. Like, why are we playing around with, like, why is he not just like an absolute ace on your show? It feels like in some ways he's been a little bit wasted to this point. And although he's put on, I mean, as you said, his matches are never a waste. If you're a wrestling fan, just being able to watch Bryan Danielson do what he does is a treat. And I was literally just sitting there. Normally I'm always cutting you off. And I literally love just sitting there listening to you talk about this. Is the type of Danielson match that you love. It's beautiful because it's like the guy knows how to simultaneously feel like he's got his pedal to the metal and just be going 1,000,000 miles an hour, but also be strategic and know how to like get people to agonize in a submission hold. And like, it's just, he knows pacing so much better than almost any wrestler. I mean, and again, when you watch a Danielson match, it feels like a war. Yeah, you said it so well. He doesn't have these squash matches. He doesn't have never does his match suffer from some of the like, oh man, like he just got worn out on his knee the whole match. His opponent worked on his knee and he just did 1,000,000 backflips. Like Danielson is such a artist at presenting the attrition in the ring.
Yeah.
He's so smart. And I think that the product would be, especially as we come into the new year, I think it would be an awesome feeling. It's been a little bit rocky. The summer of Punk has definitely been an odd one, and AEW has gone through some bumps. I think it would be an awesome feeling if Danielson was, as you said, kind of bumped into a Moxley type presentation in AEW where he was recognized as a top guy who you don't fuck with.
Yeah.
And pardon the language, but I mean, especially if Moxley gets some time off, especially if MJF becomes champion, there are guys like Danielson who can pivot between babyface and heel, and just who on this roster, who do you believe could make MJF scared like him? You know what I mean? Like, legit. MJF likes to talk a big game, and like his promo on Dynamite, like I was just rolling my eyes half of the promo, just like calling John Moxley mid is just like such a lame promo dig by MJF. And I think that Danielson's intensity, I love what you said. I want to see him back on the mic, man.
You're right.
I want to see him go after it.
Yeah.
I like it, man. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that SPD, the genie with the that you foresee something there, because if Moxley gets beat by MJF, there is going to be a hole there that I think he could fill and do it in a convincing way.
I think that we need kind of like the turning of the table, or the tides a little bit to keep AEW lively, is obviously something like that, and well as Hayter continuing to get a push, and so Rio returns and Hayter, they have a rematch, and I think that we're looking at, which we've said for a while, the next champ. I mean, whatever happens with the interim title and all that, it is what it is, and whatever is going to happen over the next few weeks or months with this title. But
it's a long-term play.
They got to push Hayter to the moon. I think if you really want to give this division depth, this is where you go. If for some reason she comes up short with against Toni Storm again, if she has a one-on-one match, then I think she's got to dethrone Jade. If Nyla doesn't, which we talked about, I predicted earlier, was those three matches at Full Gear: Nyla, Jade, Hayter, Tony, DMD, Saraya.
That's what they need to build towards. Yeah. I think that you said it perfectly. I think that is a clear path to a huge pay-per-view for the women's division. If they get three big matches like that on the pay-per-view, and the crowd will be eating up the potential of Hayter winning that match. It'll be interesting because it'll put Toni Storm in a weird spot, right? Because I do think that like Toni's title reign, she did have a little taste of what it was like with Sheeta, because Sheeta is very popular with the fans.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see Toni be able to navigate that. And let's be honest, Toni was also able to navigate her little like interaction with the DMD, who is, although a heel, very popular with the fans. So, Toni has shown an ability to just be herself, not really a babyface or a heel, just be herself. And in that regard, she would be a very interesting case study for a Jamie Hayter title push, right? Like, let the fans move this heel, Jamie Hayter, to babyface status, similar to what we saw with Wardlow and MJF, right? Like, you get to see this heel in Wardlow get that natural crowd surgence and reaction to becoming a champion and being a babyface. And I think that Hayter's trajectory, there's the parallels between those two stories is fantastic.
You're right.
And I think that it doesn't just end with the story either, SPD. I think that Hayter wrestles a lot like Wardlow. She's a bully in the ring, bro. I mean, she is a powerhouse. again, when we opened the show and I said this show didn't miss, there were like this is a match where I could say like this match was one of my favorite matches of the night. Well, I liked every match. I'll be honest with you. What I liked most about this was one, both of these two came in with as believable winners, right? Hayter, as you explained really well, is very hot to a point where people are saying Tony needs a strike now and not be patient. People are begging him to give her the title. I think that you pump the brakes, and you and I saw the natural build of Wardlow. I think that Tony is doing the same thing.
Such a long, good build, worth it. Well, worth it all.
I think he's doing the same thing with her. But you see, like, okay, Hayter needed she's hot. She needs a win. Riho came back, fresh back on the scene. She's not going to lose, right? She's a former champion. So both of these teams, like if you were a big Riho fan or you're a big Hayter fan, you were going in saying like, we're going to win this one.
Right.
And they were presented as equals, but more than anything, and I know you love this too, Riho's body type and her style in the ring, her ability to look like her back is being broken in half at times. Her just how flexible she is worked so well with the bully Jamie Hayter. And it made Hayter look like $1 million in this match. I know that you particularly, you and I talked about that, just like Hayter being able to be presented, because so much of her run, this run has been her in Britt's shadow. She was not in Britt's shadow in this match, man. She was dominating, like at times. It's just brutal, beating the crap out of Riho. It was fantastic.
It was, and we got more of those seeds at the end of the match, which is you want more depth of the women's division with Saraya, with Tony Storm, all that that's going to happen. We're going to get this sit down interview with DMD and Saraya. And I mean, to me, that's it. If you announce that match and you have MJF and Moxley and Saraya versus DMD already announced for Full Gear. I mean, typically AEW doesn't do that. They don't announce those matches too far in advance for pay-per-views, but this one, I know they had to call an audible last week with injury to Hangman, and it was kind of like going to happen. Maybe they rushed it, but it's a smart booking because it's one that everyone wants to see and is excited to see for it. And so I know you briefly touched about it earlier, but the MJF promo was a big segment of the night.
I'll let you talk about it.
And I mean, I can't believe you, Mr. Heel, is not. I know MJF is leaning towards.
I'm not in on him. I'm
still
over it.
I'm loving it, but I have a feeling we're still getting played, man. I mean, everything he did tonight was babyface to me. Having the crowd sing his slogans and all this stuff,
getting powerbomb, getting choke slammed through a table. Even
well, he had his team, he had his buddies, the firm turn on him, and so all this is an interesting segment of series of events that happened leading up to this against one of the hottest baby faces in AEW, John Moxley. And so
the heart and
MJF
soul
to be like this, the heart and soul, the MVP, John Moxley. And so for MJF to cut this promo and to lean into the crowd more and more and more every single week, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't want to fall for it completely, but it's one of those, I think he's too far over the edge where he says, I'm going to shit in your face and then, slap your mother, and people still probably cheer him, just because they're so invested in MJF.
Very popular right now.
Promos that are so real, and he's playing me, man, and he's got me, if I'm gullible or not. I'm excited.
You're usually smarter than that.
I know. I guess I'm not a smart mark.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like, even the Regal promo. Like, MJF is not hitting for me right now, bro. And maybe I'm just souring on. I'm just being a stinker. Like, and everybody loves what he's doing right now. I'm not seeing it. I think that MJF's becoming, like I said, when you resort to calling John Moxley mid, It's like, dude,
Yeah,
you're
okay,
known
that
for
part
one of the
aside.
you're known for being one of the most creative dudes in the game with promos, and you're calling like one of the most dominant one of the most dominant performers in AEW history mid. It just came off as like just lame. His
I agree
again,
with that part.
and in the dabbling of him being a babyface, I just if that ends up happening, it's a huge miss. This guy is pure heel through and through. That's why
never expected this to happen. Honestly,
I'm
like you
not.
said earlier, I
Yeah,
thought
I'm
he was
not
going to be a
buying
heel
it.
for life.
I'm not buying it. Not even for an in. Like not even.
All right,
I
good
know.
thing we
I
got these
see.
shows
I see
recorded
through
because
it.
we're gonna play this clip
I'm
in
a
a few weeks,
heel.
and you're
I
gonna
see
be
it.
all in on it.
I see it. He's a heel, and he's gonna try to play it. I don't know, man. I mean, like again, I like the concept of the firm.
What do you think of the comment early on in our show? Someone in the chat said that it's a swerve on all of us. Remember, MJF is called the devil for a reason, and they believe that Regal will help MJF win the title. Do you think that's a possibility?
That would be pretty wicked. And
That would
that would be pretty wicked, man. We did
So
talk about the Blackpool Combat Club.
He's not going to use the Dynamite diamond ring.
What if he used the brass knucks? That'd be
There you
gnarly.
go.
That would be pretty cool, man. I like that
Moxley
idea.
would lose the belt to a
Now
microphone.
you're getting me pulled in on MJF. All of a sudden,
All right.
I was all sour on him.
There we go.
Okay, how's this?
Regal's
if he uses Regal's brass knuckles to beat John Moxley, I'm back in. How's that?
It's not too far of a stretch because
I like the idea
for
a
one,
lot. Actually, it's
Moxley
really smart.
doesn't lose clean, and
Unless it's CM Punk.
Yeah. So for him to lose clean twice in a row,
you're right.
That's something. But Moxley, correct me if I'm wrong, lost the belt to Kenny Omega from Don Callis hitting him with a microphone, right? So if he loses the belt again with the brass knucks.
I like that idea too, because we spent a lot of time tonight talking about the Blackpool Combat Club and where they're going and the drama within that group. And it feels like that group is ready to burst at the seams. That could be the tipping point. MJF has a history of trying to destroy his greatest competition, his groups, by infiltrating them.
Yeah.
And you think about what he did with the Inner Circle and how he tried to weasel his way into that group and destroy that group from the inside, and it was his goal to destroy them. It would be fascinating if his way of weaseling his way into the Blackpool Combat Club was to get a relationship with Regal again and rip out Moxley's heart. What other way? Like, if you think about it, the ultimate salt in the wound, and this would be a pure MJF move. Now you're getting me all excited about him being a heel.
Go get that MJF shirt out of the closet and put
I have
right
it.
now.
I have it, and I bought it. It was against Dictator John. That was the shirt. I loved his segments back against Dictator John. I'll say this: you're right. If he were to do this, and how often do you and I talk about it? John Moxley is the what of AEW?
MVP.
He's the heart and soul of AEW,
which is the MVP essentially. Yeah.
Think about it. If MJF were to do this and have Regal turn on Moxley, like it would rip Moxley's heart out. It would be like the ultimate, like evil. Not only do you beat Moxley for his title and rip his title away from him, but then you also like have Regal, who and SPD. I know you didn't watch his this early stuff of Moxley's career because you don't like the blood and guts stuff, but like Moxley had some blood feuds with a lot of people going in his early days, and Regal was legitimately somebody who you would never think would be involved in that like hardcore, let's be honest, some of the hardcore garbage wrestling that Moxley did early in his career, where you're talking about using broken glass and cheese graters, and I saw him use like a Dremel saw, like just stuff that you don't want to think about.
Yeah.
Regal, you would never think would be associated, like, you know, this prim and proper dude would never be associated with stuff, but he was responsible for torturing Moxley in ways that few people have. It would be a very poetic like twist in the Jon Moxley story for this guy who he hated early on in his career and had a blood feud with, to eventually becoming like feeling like he earned his respect and became his apprentice. You know, Regal became his mentor, and then for him, that guy to then be corrupted by MJF, and for Regal to then stab him. Dude, I'm grinning ear to ear thinking about that is Shakespeare. that is Shakespeare right there. I love it. Now you got me geeked out about the potential of what could happen. I want to see the pay-per-view.
What we've seen over the last few weeks, there's a reason why AEW gave Regal and MJF 15 minutes of promo time, of TV time, essentially. You know, that
You're
story.
right. And Disco Inferno was trying to criticize that on the Conan 100 podcast. Disco was talking about how, you know, where's the end game in a feud if you give Regal and MJF a platform like that? You know, why? Like, it was a great promo, but what does it lead to? Well, SPD, I think you're onto something here.
And he talks about the ring and the Nux last week, and you kind of can glaze over it because you're all chanting along the mid and the generational talent and all this stuff. And
I love
think
where
it's
your
one of
head's
those
at.
things where you can he'll be like, it's like a video that they'll show of him be like, I promise I didn't, and then he's got the the Nux. It could be a promo video and stuff like that. So man, simmer on
I like
that.
it.
Let's talk main event. Speaking of, we're going to talk Moxley's challenger, MJF, in the main event. Whereas we're going to close out Dynamite Download 92. Moxley versus Penta El Cero Miedo, but I think people were calling him Pentagon Jr. yesterday. But man, anytime Penta's in the ring, man, I just love his swagger. I knew this match would be a physical one, as all of Moxley's are, and someone that could go toe-to-toe with him in terms of that physicality was Penta. It still makes me cringe every single time there's a DDT, and both guys deliver DDTs, and both guys delivered some of those brutal head drops. Man, it makes my the hair on my neck
drivers that Penta delivers are brutal, and that's a move.
They were slapping the shit out of each other too, man. This
match was dude,
a good main event.
Yeah, and this is what's cool, right? Is like, this is the type of violence that I like in my pro wrestling, and I'm not I like ECW. I'm not gonna cringe and turn it off if there's blood and stuff like you. But this was the perfect amount of violence for me, where you talked about, really stiff chops, really stiff kicks at times, pile drivers that make you cringe, and then just enough showmanship, and I know it probably pissed off Jim Cornette, right? But just enough showmanship and dancing from Penta to kind of remind you that he has that swagger, man. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I
love that.
I think it was WCW versus NWO, and there was I don't know what wrestler he was. He was a lucha wrestler where you could hit a button. And who was it?
What, with the chair?
Yeah, you dance with it.
Yeah, Parka.
Yeah,
Parka. Yeah.
Okay, that's who it was. I remember dancing. I would love that move, and I'm seeing that out of Penta every time he's in the ring.
What was his name? Wasn't it La Parka? La Parka. Sorry, it was La Parka. I said El Parka. It was La Parka, and I remember he used to be the luchador who had the chair, and you could dance around. You would put it down, and you would dance around the chair. Yeah.
So that reminds me of Penta.
Penta has that swagger to him, dude. And
he's got a lot of swagger.
And man, he came out and that entrance that he had was nasty, dude. I will say that I've been playing a little bit of a heel on Twitter at moments.
Watch yourself.
I've been hating on some of these managers that AEW has. I love managers, right? I love managers in the scope of wrestling. I think they're great. They play a pivotal role. But I notoriously, with Jose the assistant, had a little thing, and I've held back. Unfollow me. I've had a little bit of the same feeling about Alex Abrahantes with Penta, because although I love the Penta says thing, like I think it also
Agree.
is cheap. It's also cheapening. Like Penta could be a bad dude, and like he doesn't fit. Like I just feel like Alex doesn't fit the vibe that like because the Bastard has such a high intensity, like an anger and a mean streak him in, and Penta has this like ability to go to places with violence. I think Alex fits more with like a Ray Phoenix of the group, where he's just like the more like upbeat, high energy, positive. Like him with Penta, it's weird to me right now because I feel like Penta's going through a transition as a character, and I know I'm not alone. The Death Triangle and what that group is experiencing is I feel like there's like this that we're watching the dark side and the light side of the Force with Pac and Phoenix, and Penta's right in the middle. And if anybody knows Penta's history, although he and Phoenix are brothers, I think that darkness in his spirit calls him towards the Bastard too. So it could be a real war. And I hope that AEW leans into that a little bit with their stories right now, because I think that group, the Death Triangle being the Trios champions, one of the things about the title scenes in AEW is, and you can see it with the world title, this match, Moxley versus Penta, it could have been bonkers.
Yeah.
Title matches need to have some stories built around them. And like, I want to see the trios belts. That's a division we all clamored for. Mm-hmm. What is the story around the trios belts? And I think that there were seeds, even in this match with Penta and Moxley, seeds planted of where the trios belts and the Death Triangle are going to go going forward, man. Where's your head at after this match? Is obviously, let's hear your thoughts on the Moxley versus Penta, because again, like we talked about, violent in a good way. But like, we know where Moxley's going. Where does Penta go? Because I know you love the Lucha Brothers, right? And you're and the Death Triangle. Where do you see that group going? Because we kind of see Moxley versus MJF for the world title. Wardlow. I can't wait for our preview show. We already know like the tag titles, Acclaim versus Swerve, right?
Maybe if they build to that, which they could.
They could as a repeat, as a rematch
because
again.
they're not fighting next week because it's Daddy Ass's birthday.
What would be the trios, the natural trios like story? That's a curious question. Where do they go?
Right I know the answer.
Tell me.
All Elite, baby.
That's exactly what I was hoping you would say.
That's a whole nother thing, man. I mean, that was just not to brush over that because that was a huge thing. This was the first time we heard from
I'll cheers to that.
Anything about the Elite, and I think that 30-second promo was amazing. And I was like,
Perfect.
wait, what's going on? What's going on? I had to rewalk. Yeah, and so I think, as much as I don't want anything to happen to the Death Triangle's trios run, a rematch or a match with them and returning would be bonkers,
bro. And it would be the first champs, and they could say like the true champs, right?
Yep.
Versus the Death Triangle. I love it. That would be so sick. And like we know that Kenny and Pac have history, Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks have history. We got to see that. I'll always remember that cage match.
There isn't another trios team that I could see dethroning
the Death Triangle.
The Death Triangle legitimately.
And how currently cool and truthfully, like, we don't like to talk about the drama in AEW, but like, how cool would it be for the Elite to come back after being like all this stuff, all this outside noise, for them to be able to come back and become the champs again? I think everybody, like, if you're truly an all Elite wrestling fan, you're going to be excited for that. And it'll just be like the pop that would be there for when Kenny and the Bucks win the belt again. the belts again. I wish that you and I could be at that show. It would be a lot of fun, bro. That's one of those pops that would be huge. So and the match itself from a quality perspective.
I've talked about it before. Some of my favorite all-time matches in AEW are Young Bucks versus Lucha Brothers. Period.
I
then
know.
You talk about top matches in AEW again are Kenny Omega and Pac.
Iron Man
and then
match.
You put all that together. That's just like the potion that just makes the AEW so great.
It's the potion.
It is the potion.
I love it, man. It is. You're right. That would be a hell of a potion. Right on the eve of Halloween. Sign me up for that guy. Sign me up for that witch's brew. Hey man, Halloween right there.
There's La Parka.
Man, that guy was fun. And again, I think that Penta has that swagger
for sure.
That's why, even though I wish that you and I could be at that match, because you would be geeking out for the Elite, and I would have lost my voice cheering for the Death Triangle. Yeah. I would have held it down for us because I love DT. But I can't wait. I mean, that's the thing. Again, a show like tonight, really, guys, this is one of those shows that's easy to talk about because it's just there wasn't, SPD, not a single miss on this show. And not just from it was fun to watch these matches, right?
Right.
But how many of these matches did we talk about where it was like, oh, they're building towards this person getting a bigger push, like Hater, right? They're building towards Hater having a bigger push. We didn't even get the chance to talk about Darby that segment that much. Oh, they're building towards Darby having a purpose and wanting to prove himself all over again. Oh, they're building towards, the Firm playing there's so many moments in tonight's show where you're saying okay, Swerve in Our Glory just beat the number one contenders in AEW for the last 8 months. AEW sees what they got with Swerve in Our Glory. That's awesome. They're going to push those guys. And FTR's place is rock solid. So it's all right, they see what they got there. Oh, okay. Gun Club, I see you. You guys are constantly charismatic, always pushing the limits as being personality on fire. We're going to put you in a program with the greatest tag team in pro wrestling, and we're going to let you guys shine, right? You see, on a show like tonight, you see, all right, there are some serious seeds being planted for stars blossoming before our very eyes. And again, we have a lot of stars already on this roster. If the Elite come back, even better. But when you look, you have guys who are established, but I love seeing nights like tonight where you say there are stories and there are opportunities ahead for so many of these characters on this roster. And I applaud the creative team for a show like what we just had, because it's easy to be an armchair booker and say, oh, you should do this, you should push that guy.
Right.
But when you have this loaded of a roster and you have this much pressure to deliver week in and week out, you can't when you deliver like this, you deserve to be applauded, because this showed thought about where characters are going to go, not where they are now, but where they're going to go. And that's what keeps the cycle moving, man. And that's what gets a company to grow and get better. You can't stay stagnant. And just because we love a Moxley, just because we love an FTR, doesn't mean you can rest on your laurels. You have to build these future guys to be able to grab the ring. And it goes back to the Jericho being paired with Garcia and Claudio being paired with Yuta, right? You see it literally in the ring. This generation, next generation, right? There were a lot of examples of that in this show. And I think that like AEW as fans have a lot to be excited about as we head into another year of AEW programming. Like this fourth quarter is right around the corner,
Yeah.
guys.
3
And
Dynamites away from full gear.
which always is a big. I mean, again, the pay-per-views are all big.
Right.
You look at it and like there are stars blossoming before ours and people who are willing to take the spotlight. I think that we're going to start to see a lot of things hitting their stride as in the next couple weeks here, dude. I think like we talk about all the time, buckle up. I like and you guys in the chat and you SPD even got me a little bit more geeked about the main event because that was the one that I was the most. There are a lot of stories going on, guys, that have potential to really be captivating television and produce at the pay-per-view. I'm excited to see where Tony takes it, man. Tony does a great job of setting things up. Sometimes people will criticize that he doesn't know how to when to pull the trigger.
Right.
I think he's starting to set the table for All Out a little sooner than he has with other pay-per-views, and I hope that amps up as we move into next week. I think that it would be great for us. I want to see that. I don't want it to feel as rushed as what we've experienced, I think, over the summer with some of the builds of the pay-per-views.
Yeah, they would have 4 matches the night before.
Almost. Yeah, I and I think maybe what happened with the world title scene almost forced them to do that a little bit. And I hope that they see the value. I mean, Moxley, MJF watching in the crowd, all of that stuff has really built a great television. I want to see them to lean into this. Where do they take Danielson and like the Blackpool Combat Club? Like, there's definitely something there. Are they going to build to Swerve versus the Acclaimed at the pay-per-view, or are they going to jump the gun and have that match before the pay-per-view? Right? AEW would be known in times, SPD, I think you and I both talked about it. It's a great thing. They give us pay-per-view quality matches on free TV all the time. Like, I don't want to be ungrateful, right? I love that they do that, right? But like there are also many times where you and I are like, man, if they pump the brakes on that and they built it for another week or two, it could be huge at the pay-per-view. So I hope that like they see the value of slow playing a feud in the world title scene, and they apply that to the tag title scene. Because I think Swerve and Our Glory versus the Acclaimed, they have history there. Let those guys get at each other. Let them get nasty.
Yep. I think that's where
let them get nasty.
Yeah, of course. Team heel over there.
Get nasty, dude.
One final thing I want to mention before as we wrap it up is, the story, the more I'm thinking about it for the MJF and the Regal thing, when MJF came down, he gave his chip to Regal. And he said he's cashing it in. So there's all these little things that are.
Dude, you pay attention. I love that about
stir that potion. Stir it up.
No, I love that about our dynamic is like you pick up on some stuff that I don't even notice, like the entrance with Danielson and with the chip. That's something that I'm gonna be thinking about now, right? Like I'm very intrigued by this. I'm gonna head into Dynamite next week as an MJF, as a devil worshiper. God, is that lame? Gosh. God, I hate that.
Horrible. But
makes me sick saying it.
You'll see. Mark my words. Here, mark my words.
Mark my words.
After a Full Gear, you'll see Lord William Regal walking down the ring with a Burberry scarf on.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I hope that MJF will lose the
scarf and he'll pass the torch to Lord William Regal.
I love that. God, SPD, the visual is going to be fantastic. Let's make it happen. Let's
wrap up for the night. That's going to be fun. A lot of stuff. Thank you guys for joining us on Dynamite Download episode 92. We'll see you next week and have a great weekend. Enjoy another live Rampage tomorrow with our guy Wardlow going to battle.
Matt Taven versus Wardlow, guys. Watch it. Watch the match. It's going to be good.
Can't miss.